Welcome into the locker room. A lot to talk about, a lot of college football, talk high school football, some high school volleyball, and a whole lot more. So stay with us inside the locker room. And welcome in alongside Gerhard Mathigani. I'm Chase Robinson. Great show for you. We'll hop into it like we always do, take a look back at some college football and preview the games ahead. Let's start with the Auburn Tigers. Big win over Louisiana Monroe this past Saturday.
Some of the takeaways were when Gus Malzahn said last week against LSU when Auburn kicked 6 field goals, they needed to score touchdowns to get into the red zone. Now, I know that they didn't get a true test when they played Louisiana Monroe, but give them credit because they did get into the end zone. And maybe we'll see that matriculate going forward as we now go into the week when they play Mississippi State, who also has a really, really good defense, just like LSU did. So we'll see if that can carry over. I think another thing is that I think we now have seen this offense under Sean White, and we kind of are getting to know and getting to understand that, hey, this is the kind of guy that Auburn can get behind. He is not Nick Marshall and he's not Cam Newton, but they're learning to play around his strengths, and I think that's big. And then we'll see how they trickle in JF3, John Franklin III, moving forward. I think we saw a lot once again out of their defense, but my biggest takeaway was their offense, and we'll see how they do without Malik Miller, a guy that went down with a knee injury.
Mississippi State Auburn has always been a big game. It's always been a close game. You think it's going to be like that again this year?
For sure. It's in Starkville, and we had the added element this year of Auburn played its first 5 games at home, and you hardly ever see that on any level of high school, pro, junior high. You never see 5 home games to start the year. So then when you go on the road, you're not going on the road into an okay environment. You're going to a road where they have the cowbells, and Mississippi State's crowd is really loud, and you mentioned it, this rivalry's been so close over the years. I believe that place will be rocking, and that doesn't necessarily hurt some of the veteran guys, but you wonder how some of those young guys will treat that moment. How, will they, because it's the first time for most of these freshmen playing in a place like that. And so that's the one thing that I'll think about as they move forward. But Mississippi State does have a good team. This is an early kickoff, and so that's another factor in it too. When we have seen a 3-2 Auburn Mississippi State game, so we'll see how this one goes moving forward. But the one thing I will watch out for is how those freshmen handled their first road game.
You know, we talked last week about Gus Malzahn stepping away from play calling. He's letting the assistants do that job. Last week, it kind of gave him a chance, to get familiar with that. Moving back into SEC play. How much did last week help them get familiar with that?
I think it helped a lot, and the schedule kind of worked out perfectly because he started that with LSU, a tough game and a really tough environment, and he stayed back. And then he was able to let that simmer for a week and then do it again and then look better. Can he do it for a third week and they take another step? Now, obviously, I'm not saying they're going to beat Mississippi State by, however much they beat ULM by, but I think it's another step in the right direction for this, I guess, evolution of Gus Malzahn as a head coach, because he knew he had to do something and he evolved. And we'll see what manifests after that. But so far, so good after 2 weeks.
Well, here's Coach Gus Malzahn this week as they prepare for the Bulldogs.
If you really look at the history, when we've been really good at red zone offense, it was because we ran the football and we were able to run the football in. I think that's where it's got to start. But at the same time, you've got to be efficient enough, especially when they know that you're throwing the football. That's when it really gets challenging. And it's 3rd down and goal from the 6 to the 10. There's a good chance you're going to throw the football. That's really a big emphasis on what we're doing moving forward. But at the same time, the run, play, action things down there. There's a time for all of it.
You can see that Auburn-Mississippi State game, 11 a.m. Saturday morning on the SEC Network. Next, the Alabama Crimson Tide, huge win against the Kentucky Wildcats in an SEC game this past week.
I think one of the things we took away last week was how would they handle the injuries, and then a couple other guys, got a chance to step up and play. Jacobs being one of those guys, a freshman running back, and I think he did really well for himself. We saw some of the defense. Ronnie Harrison is a guy that had a scoop and score for a touchdown. Alabama, and it's almost kind of getting boring to say, they just beat people methodically. They don't necessarily wow you, and they did that on Saturday. I think moving forward, to have a great game against Arkansas, if they can game plan against these Razorbacks, who I think are improved in their balance, and I think that's a big factor in this game. Can Alabama get to a place where they play like they've played over the last couple of weeks against these top-heavy SEC teams? So we'll find out, because the next 3 weeks are a gauntlet between Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Tennessee over the next 3. I think that they can, but this is that first domino in that series.
Arkansas and Alabama the past couple of years, it's also been a really close game. You know,
Yeah.
we saw a 2-point game and the past couple of years. So what's it going to take for Alabama to get over that? You know, it's just this one game that they struggle with.
Yeah, and it's in Fayetteville, and I think that Arkansas right now is feeling good about themselves, which I think is a good thing. But the past few years have been kind of anomalies. Either Alabama's come off a big game or there's a big game coming up. And I'm not taking anything away from Arkansas, because I think Arkansas is a pretty good football team. But this year I think it might be a little bit different. I think Alabama right now is rolling going into this game. And of the 3 games, over the next 3 games I talked about against ranked opponents, against top 25, top 15 opponents, I think this is the game where they kind of set that mark moving forward. You see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it'll be a game that this will be the benchmark of who we see Alabama trying to mark their championship dominance.
Right.
And I think this game, not necessarily can get out of hand, but not as close to 17-16 as some of the other games you've seen in Fayetteville.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. And here is Coach Nick Saban this week as they prepare for Arkansas.
Quarterback is playing great for them. They're very well coached. They've got some really good skill players, wide receivers, a couple good running backs. They've got 8 starters back on defense, and they're playing really well on defense. Punter's done a great job for them all year long. So this is a really strong opponent who's only lost 1 game this year, and certainly has shown an ability to finish games and win close games in the end.
Arkansas and Alabama, 6 p.m. Saturday on ESPN. Last time the JSU Gamecocks took the field, huge win over Liberty. They were off last week. Well, they head straight into Ohio Valley Conference play this Saturday with Tennessee Tech.
Rested and refreshed, and I think they came off the best game of the season against Liberty, and I think that the situation, just like we talked about with Auburn playing 5 home games to start the year being kind of odd, right now this is JSU's first OVC game. They're playing Tennessee Tech going on their 4th OVC game. That's the difference in the scheduling so far. JSU drew the stick this year where they don't have to play Tennessee State, and so the schedule just kind of naturally came out that way. But coming off their best game of the season, and then now going into a place where, playing at home, but playing a team that they have routed over the past few years, and they have racked up 500 yards on average over the last 3 or 4 meetings. I think that this game sets up perfectly for JSU to start their OVC stretch. Not a pushover by any means, but definitely a team where they can mark, just like Alabama, mark their dominance in this conference.
Well, as JSU prepares for their first conference game, here's Coach Gross this week in his weekly press conference.
Never talk about a streak in OVC or winning OVC. It's next game up, and we're focused on that game, and and really focused on ourselves and how we can get better. We want to win every week, and we'll do everything we can prep wise to learn our opponent, and we play that next man up type deal, and this is the next game, and we got to be 1-0 this week. We got to win this week, and that's where you at.
They'll begin their Ohio Valley Conference play Saturday 1 p.m. against Tennessee Tech on ESPN3. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, we'll talk some high school football and high school volleyball, so stay with us inside the locker room. Back here on the locker room, and this week is a huge high school football game in Class 3A. It's our game of the week on the Pigskin Roundup, Gerhard, as Glencoe heads over to Weaver.
Yeah, this will be interesting because these are 2 of the 4 teams really kind of battling for positions 3 and 4 in the playoffs. We talked at the beginning of the season just how tough Class 3A Region 5 is, and we're now starting to see the fruits of that. With Piedmont and Ohatchee, assuming that they're 1-2 right now because they're both undefeated, they'll play each other next week. Randolph County and Walter Wellborn, in addition to Glencoe and Weaver, are those teams fighting for those playoff spots. And these 5 teams, are as good, maybe even better than some of the teams that will make the playoffs and win region championships in other regions. And so this is big in order, not for right now, but moving forward into the season. I think we'll look back on this game as one of those marquee games that one team went in, one team went out, and we'll see how it all matriculates. But I think that Glencoe and Weaver right now playing pretty good ball. They want to be playing their best ball come Friday night.
And there's some other big region races out there, a lot of good football still left. Another one, and we'll look at the polls in just a minute. But another one of those big region races is in Class 6A with Oxford, Pell City, Southside. We saw Oxford just barely edged out Southside last
Right.
week. So that's another really close region.
Yeah, it really is, and it's looking like it's coming down to Scottsboro and Oxford, and we'll see how. Pell City's coming up, I guess, next for Oxford. They'll play Fort Payne, who's winless on the year. But I think what we'll see moving forward with this Oxford football team is, can they take the kind of competition that they've played so far and then move forward and beat better opponents? We'll see how they play against Pell City. And we'll see. Right now they're undefeated, so they're in a good spot. If they beat Fort Payne, they're one step closer to that goal of a region championship, and they're really high ranked in the polls right now. I think we'll see how it goes. They beat Albertville. With Albertville lost their quarterback. That's the other really good team in this region. We'll see how they play against Pell City, but it looks like they're a region championship to lose.
Well, let's take a look now at the Alabama Sports Writers Association high school football polls, and we'll start with Class 6A there as Blunt leads at number 1, followed by Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. And there you see the Oxford Yellow Jackets at number 3. And then you see some teams that have had a lot of success in the past. Opelika at 4, Spanish Fort, and Clay Chalkville.
Yeah, those are 3 teams when you think about Class 6A football. Clay Chalkville, especially with some of the high-prized talented recruits that have come out of there. That's the one team that you look at, hey, they've been here before. They've won. Many of the kids have state championship rings on their finger. So we'll see if they can make a run. But, of course, Spanish Fort and Opelika have a lot of talent. And Blunt, Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, for a lot of teams here in East Alabama, a lot of football fans here in East Alabama, used to seeing Blunt up there, and you kind of want to see how they go moving forward. And then Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa is another fantastic team out in West Alabama.
Well, let's take a look now at Class 5A. St. Paul is there in number 1, but they're at number 4 and 5, Etowah and Scottsboro. They're both in the same region in Class 5A,
Yep.
So that'll be a tight race there. And there you see the Vols of Clay Central at number 9.
Yeah, when we talked earlier about the Class 6A standings, and I mentioned Scottsboro, that was a missay. Scottsboro and Etowah right now are in a lot right now for that region championship. But you see how strong that region is with both those teams in the top 5 in the state of Alabama. But Class 5A, for now, in my opinion, will belong to St. Paul's until somebody beats them. Beauregard, I hear, has a very good team. A lot of teams in this area, a few teams in this area will play Beauregard, so we'll get a better mark on them as the season moves forward. But we'll see how Etowah and Scottsboro do against that kind of competition. And then, of course, we see Central Clay County, which I've seen a couple times this year, and they've looked solid as well.
Let's take a look now at Class 4A. Of course, UMS right in number 1, Madison Academy at number 2, the Mumford Lions at number 6, Leeds 8, and Jacksonville at 9.
Yeah, this is another interesting Class 4A situation because we do have teams like Mumford, who was here last year, and Mumford, a team that lost their first game of the season to Central Clay. They have not lost since, and I think that they're just now finding who they are. Jacksonville's team that haven't lost all season, we'll see how they are moving forward as well, but Leeds is that team that they've been there. They've been to that level. They've been to state championships, and so just like with Clay Chalkville in Class 6A, I think Leeds kind of holds that same spot in Class 4A. Expect them to make a run, but of course, you know, the usual suspects are up there with UMS Wright and Madison Academy.
And now let's take a look at Class 3A, which Madison Academy used to be a part of, but Piedmont now sits at number 1, followed by Gordo. And then there you see at number 7, the Ohatchee Indians keep moving up in this Class 3A poll.
Slightly moving up each and every week, and one of the things that Scott Barton told me at homecoming of their pep rally was he had a conversation with Steve Smith, and one of the things that came out of that is you are no longer now going to sneak up on anybody. They're sneaking up at the polls, but not sneaking up on anybody because people are seeing the kind of team that they're putting together. For the first 4 weeks of the season, they were one of the state leaders in scoring points, and they do it mainly on a running offense. That tells you the strength of their offensive line, the strength of their quarterback, their running back with Sellers, with Eubanks as their quarterback, and then Sellers, Eubanks, and there's another running back that escapes me. But I think that Ohatchee right now is in a good position to not necessarily vault up the polls like Oxford has, but slowly move up there. But teams around this area, they know how good the Indians are.
Let's take a look now at Class 1A. Maplesville at number 1, very familiar spot for them. Spring Garden at 3, Cedar Bluff and Wadley there at 6 and 7. But that Spring Garden, they come to JCA this week. I'll be at that game. But Spring Garden always, up there in the polls.
Yeah, and they're playing really well right now. They're in the same situation as Ohatchee, is that their quarterback is back, and they have Dakota Lambert, Ben Ivy, playmakers at the quarterback and running back positions, and guys that have been there before. This is the team that Spring Garden was kind of hoping that would be this far in the polls. They're senior heavy, and we'll see how they stack up. But you remember last year, Cedar Bluff was that team, and Spring Garden and Cedar Bluff still have to play one another. And I'm interested to see how the defending 1A runner-up, Cedar Bluff, who lost to Maplesville in the state championship at Tuscaloosa, how do they match up against this Spring Garden team? Last year, we saw how it played out. We'll see how this year is. Will that flip now to Spring Garden, and will Spring Garden now become the champions of the 1A North? That's a long way down the road. I know we're talking 4, 5, 6 weeks down the road, but it's interesting as we look forward to Spring Garden and Cedar Bluff coming up in the next few weeks.
Well, we always love this high school football talk here on TV 24. Join us at 10:30 Friday night on Pigskin Roundup for all the scores and highlights. So let's switch gears to volleyball. Huge game Monday night, Pete Matthews Coliseum in the Calhoun County Volleyball Championship. Really a familiar team in Jacksonville coming in against Pleasant Valley, who's only lost 5 games this season, but Jacksonville comes out as the county champions, a very familiar place for them.
Jacksonville and champions in volleyball have been synonymous for a long time, and we heard from David Clark the other night about just how good this team can be, and I think that we've gotten to a point now where Jacksonville's kind of reclaiming its dominance, not only in this county, but overall. We'll see if that can continue to move forward, but it speaks to the power of the volleyball in this county. We have teams like Donahoe, who's had a rich tradition of winning state championships. Of course, Jacksonville has done the same thing, and Pleasant Valley, who's moving up, and as you said earlier, as they've only lost a handful of matches all year long. So we'll see how each of those teams do in the state championships down in Birmingham in the next few weeks, or down in Huntsville in the next few weeks. We'll see if they can all come back with the state championship trophy. And that'll speak to the power of just how good Calhoun County volleyball is.
Well, we're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, we'll have the locker room roundtable and our pick 6. So stay with us here in the locker room. Back here in the locker room, and it's October, which means it's time for some baseball and playoffs.
Yeah, this is my favorite time of year. I've always said that. I love early October to mid-October because you kind of have the 3 sports merging, the 3 major sports merging at the times that I really like them, the heart and the meat of the football season, as well as the start of the basketball season with the NBA, college, and high school, and then the ending of the baseball season and the baseball playoffs. To me, I love the baseball playoffs. And I watch on just about every game because every pitch matters so much. And we had a great start, and as we shoot today, yesterday's game with the Baltimore Orioles going to Toronto, a festive atmosphere. That game going to the bottom of the 11th inning, and Edwin Encarnacion launching a 3-run jack to send them into the divisional round. But one of the questions was Buck Showalter. He left his phenomenal closing pitcher on the bench. Last name Britton, .50 ERA, the lowest in the history of Major League Baseball for players who've pitched more than 60 innings. Left him on the bench, only allowed 4 runs since April, and now we're in a situation where we're questioning one of the best managers, ever. We'll see who comes out of the National League wild card game, but as it relates to overall, I like the Cubs and I like the Red Sox and Big Poppies last year.
Well, let's switch gears to football. We've been talking a lot of football. But a lot going on in the coaching ranks, including at Texas. A lot of rumors come out this week. How hot is Charlie Strong's seat right now at Texas?
It takes 212 degrees for water to turn to steam. I think we're at 211.8 right now, and I think that it could soon go out. And we've seen him fire his defensive coordinator, and that to me points to a desperate move by a head coach. He's now going to be calling defensive plays, and they're giving up 5,000 yards per game. And you just can't continue to do this and not win at the level that Texas expects to win. And I think that we've gotten to the point at the beginning, they kind of gave him his chance because he did well with Louisville, he did well at Florida as a defensive coordinator. And then now the fan base, who was already restless as they are as Texas fans in the first place, but we're now gotten to a point where they allowed 49 against Oklahoma State, and they allowed 50 points in the game before. I think that Texas has gotten to a point where they're just fed up with Charlie Strong vis-a-vis the where they think they should be. And I think that we've reached the end of the Mack Brown level of frustration early now in this 3rd year of Charlie Strong.
What kind of coach will Texas get? What kind of coach should they need to get them back up there?
There's two words, and I think that it's the same guy who basically can name his job at the end of the season. It's Tom Herman. I think that the guy that is at Houston right now knows that recruiting base so well. And I think it was interesting that LSU fired their coach in the middle of the year, and Texas has come out and said they will not fire Charlie Strong at the end of in the middle of the year. They'll fire him if they do. They didn't say this, but if they do, they'll fire him at the end of the year. But you got to think about the jobs that'll be opened up. You have USC that'll be open. You have LSU that'll be open. You'll have Houston that'll be open. If Herman's goes to any one of those jobs, a good Houston job will now be open as well. Maybe Notre Dame with Brian Kelly. They're saying that he might be on the hot seat as well. Maybe his is opened up. Depending on how well or poorly Tennessee does, Butch Jones, could the Tennessee job be opened up? I think that Herman can name where he wants to go, but this coaching season, December, should be really, really fun as all these teams, high-profile teams, look for a new head man.
We'll keep you updated on all that. Staying with football, it is time for our Pick Six this week as we take a look at last week's rankings. As unfortunate as it was for me, I went 2-4 last week. Gerhard and Mickey back at 4-2, and Mickey's leading us there at 20-10. You 19-11 though. Let's take a look at our games this week. Mickey not with us, but we have his picks, and in this one he's going with the Florida Gators.
Same here. This game will be, I think, a kind of a crucial game for the Gators, also a crucial game for LSU. But one of the things about this game is health. Florida is getting Luke Del Rio back. Fournette will not be on the field for LSU. I think that this game already teetered Florida's way, but with that news, I think it goes all the way to the Gators.
I've got the upset in this one. I'm going with LSU. Next is Texas at Oklahoma, and Mickey is going with Oklahoma.
You know, Jason Sparks, he creates these graphics, and for anyone who's been keeping up with the show over the last few weeks, I made a declaration that if Texas burned me for the second time, I will not let it happen for a third time. I will pick against Texas for the rest of the season, and I don't care if they're playing a JV team. I'm going with the Oklahoma Sooners, and I really like Oklahoma to win in this game, but not necessarily because of anti-Texas, but because they're going against a Heisman Trophy candidate, and Oklahoma's already basically out of the playoff, but they're playing for a lot of pride. This game is a benchmark game for both these teams. I like the Sooners in the Red River rivalry.
I got the Sooners in this one as well. Next, Tennessee at Texas A&M. And Mickey has got the Aggies.
You know, this was another interesting game. I think that this is a game for most SEC fans who don't know how good these two teams are. We'll find out as they play each other, because there's a lot of question marks with both these teams. Is Texas A&M, are they just a September team that faults late? How lucky has Tennessee been? Has it been lucky top really over the last playing Appalachian State and then beating Georgia at the last second? We'll see how they are. That said, I do like the Aggies in College Station.
I'm going with A&M in this one. Next is the Alabama Crimson Tide at Arkansas. And Mickey is going with Alabama.
Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, I think that Alabama will win this game. But not only do I think it will win this game, I don't think it will be all that close.
I got the Tide in this one. Next, an ACC matchup, Florida State at Miami. And Mickey is going with the Noles.
Hurricane Matthew is going to play a big factor in this one because it's making landfall, I think, today as we shoot, and then Miami won't be able to practice like they want to practice, but I think that Miami's got something going under Mark Richt, and I think that they'll take that right into a team that is upset and mad about everything that happened last week. They'll pile on and give Florida State their third loss.
I'm going with another upset here. I'm going with Florida State. And finally, Virginia Tech and North Carolina. And Mickey is going with North Carolina.
You have to worry about the hangover effect of how they beat Florida State last week. But North Carolina was a good team last year. And I think Virginia Tech slipping, still trying to find their way with their new coach, Justin Fuentes. So I like the Tar Heels at home.
I got North Carolina as well. And we'll, of course, talk about all these games coming up next week. And join us again then for more college football talk right here on The Locker Room.